In today's gospel reading, we have this account of the disciples of our Lord trying to go to the other side, going, in this case, to Capernaum, the other side of the sea. And our Lord comes to them. And if you recall, this passage comes up in the parallel gospels or the synoptic gospels as well. So the synoptic gospels are the first three gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and they're called the synoptics because there's a lot of similarities between them. The Gospel of John has different things. So this reading today is from the Gospel of John, but as I mentioned, it comes up in other places, so we don't get the full picture here. So first of all, would they have just left on their own? Most likely not. So our Lord probably sent them ahead, telling them to go to the other side. And it mentions that there was a strong wind blowing and the waves were large. So in other words, it's very difficult to make progress. So they're kind of fighting against the waves. They're not making progress. They see our Lord. They think he's a ghost. They can't imagine that he would be walking on the water, but he is. And he comes to them. And it says they wanted to take him into the boat, but they do take him into the boat. But when he gets into the boat, immediately they reach the other side. In other words, the waves and the wind, it's all overcome. And there's an important lesson here for all of us. So, in other words, when we are striving for a particular goal, it might be heaven, it might be something in the spiritual life. We exert our efforts, and it seems like so many things are against us. Things just don't seem to be working out the way they should. But when we take our Lord into the situation, when we invite our Lord into the situation, then we're more likely to succeed. Now, I mean, another typical example of this when we think of the scriptures would be, St. Peter going fishing, and then our Lord says, cast the net on the other side, and they catch a great multitude of fish. In other words, our Lord blesses their endeavor, blesses their work. Does that mean that you will always succeed? Well, no. But you see, the tendency of many people is just to rely upon themselves, on their own abilities, and they neglect to invite our Lord into the situation. Often when people are, struggling to figure things out, what decision should I make about this or that important matter, sometimes they don't present it to the Lord. They don't ask for guidance from the Lord. They think they have to figure it out. So the whole part of this message, the whole important part of this message is to take our Lord into every situation. And especially, for people who sometimes you're used to doing things, you think, oh, well, I don't need any help. I can do this on my own. And that may be true. But you see, repeatedly doing that, we tend to forget about our Lord. And eventually we realize we're struggling, we're not making progress, we're not as content or happy as we should be. And so the problem is we haven't brought our Lord into it. So how do we bring our Lord into it? How do we bring our Lord into our lives? Well, the key is prayer. Without prayer, we're not going to have our Lord in our lives. So we need to have this personal relationship with our Lord. Of course, the sacraments are the primary channels of God's grace through which the presence of God becomes more manifest, more present in our lives. But if we're not praying, the sacraments are not going to benefit us much. So the better quality of our prayer, the more quality we have in our prayer life, the more likely we are to benefit by our worthy reception of the sacraments. So prayer is essential. Prayer is key. And we see our Lord, he spent entire nights in prayer. In fact, even on this occasion, he stays in the mountain area by himself. He's praying. He's giving an example. So through prayer, we grow in our union with God, and through prayer, God becomes more fully present within us, and God will enlighten us to see, so that we can see how best to approach the things that we need to do. And, some people say, oh, well, Father, I'm so very busy. And the ideal is that we take time in the morning before we begin our busy day to spend quality time with God, ideally in meditation or in mental prayer. But for those people who are extremely busy, and I mean for everyone also, it's also important and good to pray throughout the day. And, we can kind of set reminders for ourselves. People have cell phones, they can just schedule, an alarm goes off. Oh, say your prayers. So, for example, doing the Angelus or the Queen of Heaven Rejoice right now during the Easter season. So 6 a.m., 12 noon, 6 p.m. If you wake up late, you could do it shortly after you wake up. Grace before meals is another thing, the 3 p.m. Holy Hour or Divine Mercy Hour, right? So little reminders throughout the day to pray. And also, sometimes the type of work people do, it requires a lot of mental attention and focus. So it kind of makes it hard to focus on God at the same time. And in such situations, the ideal is to pray before you begin your work. So, as adults, we're so used to doing many things. We're competent, we're capable. We don't need God's help. At least we think we don't need God's help in so many aspects of our lives. But the ideal is that we invite God into every aspect of our lives. And one of the keys to this, as I mentioned, is prayer, but also trusting God. And in today's responsorial psalm, Lord, let your mercy be on us as we place our trust in you. We place our trust in you. So in other words, when the disciples take our Lord into the boat, they reach the other side. But the ideal is that when we take our Lord into our lives or into our boat, that we make him the captain of the ship. In other words, we allow him to steer and to guide the ship that we are. And so often we depend upon ourselves or following our own will instead of following the will of God. So this entrustment can only happen if we have a deep prayer life, and through our life of prayer, we learn to trust God ever more fully. So if we want God's blessings, if we want to attain the goals that we are striving for, let us invite God ever more fully through our life of prayer, through our commitment to a regular routine of prayer in our own lives.